Welcome to Good Thinking. Welcome to Good Thinking Live. Welcome, all you good thinkers. Today, I want to make it short and sweet and have a discussion because I really want your feedback and opinion about a topic that I know I grapple with, and as I understand it, I'm not alone. And that is, when is good enough? I mean, we hear stories of the study of the violin experts or professionals who have studied 10,000 hours and then they know that they are then good enough. And you think, okay, well, what am I going to do? Time everything I do, whatever. How do you know when to put stuff out there and when to hold back and make it better and tweak? And if you do put stuff out there, how do you know with whom to share it? How do you know to hit publish versus identifying a couple of key people who will give you the kind of feedback that you need? And what kind of feedback do you need? All right, so let me know who you are and where you're from. We will get started. Jennifer is here from Portland in the house. And I'm going to confess something. Thank you for being here. Thank you for telling us straight out Portland. This is great. Greetings from 60 miles west of the world's best windsurfing. Yeah, you should come to Oregon and go to the gorge and see the magnificent windsurfers and kite surfers. That is so terrifying. It looks like they're going to be decapitated with all of these kites soaring around. Timothy is here. Humans that can save us all. Humans that can save us all. All right. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And does anyone have some very clear, good advice that you can share with me and that you can share with other good thinkers, that you have maybe a checklist or some way to know when is good enough? And then, what does it mean that it's good enough for what? But some people seem to have this, okay, I do this, 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 and this, almost like a checklist. And then I know that I'm ready for the next step. And the reason that I'm curious, so if you have something, okay, question, then I'll confess my reason that I'm curious. If you have something where you have definitive or something reliable that helps you know when is good enough, and you don't have to even say what it is. Do you have something or some checklist, something that you can rely on, or do you not? Or is it always a struggle, like it sometimes is with me, to know when is good enough? You have a system or it's a struggle? Let me know in the chat. And we've got, and LinkedIn, and sometimes it says LinkedIn user. See how it says LinkedIn user from Amsterdam? But then when we get into LinkedIn, we'll be able to see who you are. So you can put your name in the chat. Then I can say, hi, LinkedIn user from Amsterdam. Love Amsterdam. All right, so here's my confession. Today, I was getting ready for my show. The Good Thinking Show. I usually have everything prepared well in advance. I have unlimited amounts of, numbers of topics and areas of interest that I'm super curious about. And so it's not hard for me to pick something. I mean, I have a whole list of things to pick something to talk about. And I just wasn't that inspired. I mean, nothing seemed good. Nothing seemed good enough. And there are so many topics and little things I thought, what would make a good show? And then I decided, I'm just going to fire it up and address this fact that I'm not even sure that I was ready with something that was good enough for today. And yet I know that with the good thinkers around the world, I can get that energy and get those ideas because I have a lot of work to do, a lot of things to create. So we've got, hi from Bangladesh. And we have, our own insights. All right. So how do you rely on your own insights? That's my question, Baharak. How do we rely on our own insights? All right. One of the things that has been really well documented, how do you know when good is good enough is that you have a list of people that you can rely on to be honest with you. And those have to be the right balance of being able to understand your content separate from you. And I'll give you an example. All right. The example is that I have people that I can rely on to look over my content or present my content, but they know me so well that they fill in some of the gaps in some of the things that someone who doesn't know me well, who's receiving the same content, wouldn't be able to fill in. So I'm working on a workshop. I present to show these new little areas in the workshop to people who know me well, my people, and they say, "Oh, that's great," or "Oh, that's great," and they have to unlearn the things about me to give me the kind of feedback I need, because they can start filling in the gaps. I knew what Becky meant, but that's not what she said. Anyway, so the first thing is to have a reliable group of people. It probably should be around 3 people. 3 is kind of a sweet number for a lot of things, because you get too many cooks in the kitchen, you get conflicting things, and you get too few, it can kind of skew you toward the naysayers or the yaysayers. But if you have 3 specific people that you can run a topic by, something you're creating, maybe you're writing a blog post, or you have a business idea, and you've done more than think about it as an idea, you've actually thought it through. Or you are doing a course, an online course, or you're producing a song, anything where you are creating something, writing a book, anything where you've mapped out the idea, to have 3 people. They don't even need to know you particularly well, but to have 3 people that you can rely on to give you honest feedback, both good and bad. And also creating that safe space for those people to give you the honest feedback. For example, sometimes I might ask someone for honest feedback, and when they give me honest feedback that I don't like, I'm so close to them that I'm mad at them. So that's not safe for them to give me honest feedback. And so they learn to kind of say what I want them to say versus what I need them to say. So this gap between what you want people to say and what you need people to say has to be filled with the incentive toward what you need them to say. So if you have 3 people who have an incentive to tell you what you need to know, and you can send it out to them. Now, it may be that you don't want to be one of their people. In other words, reciprocity and feedback can skew the feedback you get. Because if I have someone that I always go to for feedback, and then they want my feedback, then I might feel that I have to be balanced in the feedback I give them, and they need to be balanced in the feedback that they give me, when feedback on my content has nothing to do with feedback on their content. Does that make sense? All right. So Jennifer says that you need reliable people for honest feedback. You also need to be aware that reciprocity can negatively influence that reliability. They owe you positive feedback because you told them their book is great. You told them their blog post is ready to publish. When you send your music to them, they're going to feel a draw or a pull to say something like, your music is ready to be published, even though it might not be, or they may see some things that you might want to address. All right. So LinkedIn, I like how you present it, totally with you. All right. So the question is it enough for you to assume, hey, I like what I'm putting out there, I'm going to put it out there? Is that enough? Maybe it is. No right answer. Is it enough for you to feel good about your content to put it out there? And then the next question is, what does it mean to put out there? What does it mean? Is it different if you publish it anonymously, if you just make a big blast and you do all the marketing? Do you test it? When you think of putting something out there, maybe you're making a video, again, a song, a blog post, a painting, anything you're creating, maybe a website about your company. Maybe you're going to launch your business and this is going to be your website. What does it mean? Do you do a soft landing, a hard landing? Do you have your 3 people? Do you ask too many people? You put it out on Facebook and you just let people tell you, or you put it out on LinkedIn and you let people tell you. Is that a good method? All right. Jennifer says, why do we so easily believe the negative feedback over the positive? Okay, that's really a good one because there is a negativity bias. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And I'll tell you, it's very difficult. It's all about confidence to accept all feedback. All right. I love that too. I think that one of the best tools for knowing the difference between haters, there's this bias where you only hear the negative. And then there's the bias where you dismiss negative feedback. So it's kind of weird. Like, how do you not internalize the negative feedback, but still take it in so that it's constructive? Because it's not always on the person giving you the feedback to make it constructive. Sometimes you need to make the feedback constructive yourself. It's not the onus of the person that you're asking for feedback. I mean, ideally, they would be good at giving feedback. But if you're asking someone to give you feedback and then you're telling them, and it has to be this way, that might be a little bit too much responsibility to put on your list of 3. So how do you internalize the feedback so that you're not beating yourself up? Well, the first thing is that you start with what you're not. So whatever you're trying to create, let's say that you are a jazz musician, or you are creating a video for products, or you're doing a good thinking show, and you think, I think everyone would love my jazz, or I think everyone should buy my product, or I think everyone's going to love good thinking. That's the first sign that you need to kind of hone in on a better qualitative thinking so that you can get the feedback you need. And the first thing that I love to do is to start with what you're not. Identify your non-audience. So, for example, for good thinking really centers, the show really centers on critical thinking, right? So who can help me, who've watched the show, who've been one of the good thinkers, who's participated, who's not watched but been part of the show, who can help identify who is good thinking not for? Like, who would you say among your friends, that person, a type of person like that shouldn't be part of the show? Anyone? Let me know in the chat. All right. Meanwhile, Michael says, you can give more weight to the person giving feedback is an expert or experienced in that field. Absolutely. You can. And though, what if they don't remember what it's like or how they got to their expertise? That could be. I think it's definitely a good start. My question is, for whom is good thinking not appropriate? Like, if someone wants to believe deeply in what they believe and not have to question their own beliefs, then is good thinking not for them? All right. Jennifer said, or let's see. Stephen says, good. Not for the woohoo. The woohoo? You mean like the woo-woo? All right. So sometimes people, I think maybe what Stephen means is that this is not for people whose conclusions are solid, that it's some kind of cosmic something, or is that what you mean? This may not be a show for people who don't want to question their own assumptions because they've already figured it all out. That could be. So if someone is very strong in their beliefs about any topic, I mean, any topic, and they don't want to question their beliefs in a way that might be uncomfortable, but they're really excited to question other people's beliefs, this show might not be for them. Would you agree or disagree? Aha. Oh, woo-woo. Stephen says autocorrect. Woo-woo. Okay. I was like, woohoo, not for woohoo. And then Michael, I think, nails it. Those with a closed mind. Michael, those with a closed mind. All right. So today I thought to myself, is this good enough? I mean, I think about when is good enough all the time. are there enough discussion points to just fire up this live? And I think there are, because in addition to your 3 reliables and starting with what you're not, you can just with those 2 things, you can then know that it's ready to go. And when you do get that feedback, you're not necessarily internalizing the negative. And I'll give you an example. My very first book that I wrote was about real estate, because I was in real estate for a number of years, and it was a sales book about real estate, but it was definitely not rated PG, not rated G. So it was a little bit risque, well, quite a bit risque, because it was a fun way of telling the stories and the lessons from the industry. And if you are easily offended by language, this book is not for you. If you are not really at all interested in real estate, I mean, this was back in the day. If you were not interested in real estate, this book is really not for you. So that helped me, because when I received, great praise, because someone said, "This is so funny. I have no interest in real estate, but this is so funny," I could temper that praise. I mean, that was nice. It felt good. But I didn't overly assess the value of their feedback, because they weren't they weren't exactly my target audience. They weren't my avatar. So it really wasn't for people not interested in real estate. So I could appreciate that positive feedback, but I would minimize the amount of time I would celebrate, or minimize how valuable it was to me. I mean, I was happy that it was funny for people. All right. When someone was extremely offended by some of the language or stories in the book, arousing the bi-curious, B-U-Y, curious, then I also knew not to take that feedback too seriously. So what happened was, I had some people were like, "Oh, this is so, inappropriate language." But I had this one real estate, this woman who owned a large real estate firm, and she thought it was funny, and she thought it was really good content. But her criticism was that the content was so risque that it was, in some cases, not going to be appropriate for work. And you think to yourself, well, if you can't take the little humor. No, at that point, that was really important feedback that I needed to pay attention to, because she was not outside of who my avatar was. She was smack dab in my avatar. So I needed to listen to her very good negative feedback. I didn't need to internalize the feedback. I didn't need to make the negative feedback about the content about me. And I didn't need to make Jennifer's point zealots. I didn't need to make the people who love the content but had nothing to do with the industry, I didn't need to make that about me as well. So the third thing, and the third point, is to remove the idea from the person. So if you have something that you're putting out there and you feel, I mean, sometimes we feel like we're giving birth to something. When you create something from scratch, or seemingly create something from scratch, it's easy to think, this is me. I'm putting so much of myself out there that this content is me. And the third thing to do is kind of separate the content from yourself, so you can evaluate the content and the feedback on the content. Even if it says, I don't like the way you said that, I don't like the way you looked, I don't like your tone or your words, but to separate that from who you are as a person, even if it's the most important product you have ever created. So the three things, if anyone else has any ideas, what do you do to know when good is good enough? So my three, I have my three people. I don't provide feedback on those three. If those three people are my people, I don't provide feedback for them on their content. I mean, I can say, oh, if they ask me, but I'm very careful to not have that reciprocity taint their feedback and mine. So keeping the three. Then I start with what I'm not. I mean, probably start with that too, but you start with what you're not. You identify the people that are not likely, or you're not designing your content for. You know, if someone hates jazz and you are putting out a jazz album and someone says, I hate that album, you don't need to worry because they're not your avatar. So identifying, and then you can dismiss that feedback. You don't have to say, hater's going to hate, I'm going to ignore that. And you don't have to internalize it. You can just say, oh, it makes sense that they don't like it because this wasn't designed for them. That's good. But then to know, this is my sweet spot. This is for whom I'm designing it. A lot of times it's easier to say, I'm all about this than to say what you're not about. So when I say start with what you're not, I mean, really identify for whom your product is not. And when you feel yourself slipping in, but it's all about these people, or I want these people to love it. Stop yourself so you can really take the time to identify who is not your avatar, who's not going to listen to your music, who's not going to watch your video, who's not going to subscribe to your YouTube, who's not going to be part of Good Thinking, who's not going to like your course, who's not going to read your book, and design it so that those people don't matter. That's huge. And then the third. All right, Stephen. Let's see what Stephen says. I try to ask myself if the intended audience is better off with or without the given draft or version of whatever I'm creating. I think that's excellent. Rubber chicken. I don't care what you say about not caring about rubber chickens. I think that's excellent. I think that should ideally come after, instead of asking yourself, is the intended audience better off with it, with or without it, which is hard because who knows if people are better off without it. That's hard. But the first thing to do is the unintended audience clear in my mind? Is the unintended audience clear in my mind? Because then when the unintended audience doesn't like what you're doing, they're responding appropriately, and you don't have to internalize it as negative. That is the empowering part of Jennifer's question, which is, how do you not internalize negative feedback? Well, if the negative feedback is from your unintended audience, that's positive feedback. That's reinforcing that you're on the right track. All right. So when is good enough? Sometimes you just have to fire it up and give it a shot. And the reason that I felt like today I could just kind of throw this out and have this discussion was that I have good thinkers like you who give great feedback. But I'm very curious. I was very curious to learn who you think is not appropriate for this content. And next week, I'm filming 2 new LinkedIn courses on critical thinking. So I'll be talking about those as we know what the launch dates are for here. We're going to be filming it right here. So that's why I have my green screen up, because we're getting everything set up right here in my home office, which is going to be very cool. LinkedIn Learning has gotten so great at doing remote courses. Normally you fly into Carpinteria, you do this whole production in their studios, but with COVID and the pandemic, they've really adapted. And so it's going to be fun to do these 2 new courses next week. Hopefully you will join me each Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time on Good Thinking, and be part of this Good Thinking conversation. And if you are so inclined to subscribe on YouTube, you can go to Becky Saltzman, subscribe on YouTube, and hit that notification button a couple times, and you will be, or the bell rather, and you will be notified of new shows because it's all about participation. And I love all of you good thinkers that are here, either during the live or even after, creating your comments, creating the conversation around giving us a little bit of a reprieve from all the things we are told what to do and what to think, and just devote a little bit more time to improving how we think. So thank you for being here. I hope you have a great week.